Welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. We're an Irishman down this week, so it's just myself, Finno, Joe and Kev as we run through this week's Premier League fixtures as well as the latest goings-on around the English top flight. Guys, how are you getting on?
Really good, thanks.
Good, thanks, Finno.
Good. So heading straight into this weekend's games, kicking off at the King Power Stadium on Friday night where Leicester host Newcastle. I think Leicester can guarantee Champions League football if results go their way. Obviously, they drew against 10-men Southampton last week. Newcastle, on the other hand, can virtually guarantee safety, I think just by matching Fulham's result. Joe, did you see anything from Leicester that makes you think they're going to do anything other than solidify that claim for a Champions League spot?
No, I think they'll get the Champions League. They were very disappointing, though. For those who didn't see it, Southampton had a player sent off after 10 minutes. And last time that happened on a Friday night at St Mary's, Leicester scored 9. So I was incredibly nervous when Vestergaard got sent off. I thought, oh Christ, here we go again. It's going to be 5 or 6. But actually, Leicester were very disappointing. And I think they'll be annoyed because that was a huge chance for them to win big and, really, secure that place. But having said that, Newcastle were also very disappointing against Arsenal, didn't really turn up by all accounts. So you'd have to say Leicester should win this one comfortably. I think there is question marks now whether Leicester will finish 3rd or 4th because Chelsea are coming on really strong, aren't they? So maybe that Leicester will finish 4th and not 3rd, but I think they're still secure in the Champions League.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll be all that bothered about that. Like gone are the days, right, where 4th, there was that world of difference between 3rd and 4th in terms of the qualifier. But I don't think it'll make too much difference. I agree. I think it was a strange result. It was very surprising after what happened. But all credit to Leicester. They've been good for almost all the season. And yeah, I reckon they'll get it sorted this weekend.
Saturday, the lunchtime kickoff sees us start at Elland Road, where Leeds welcome Tottenham. Spurs battered Sheffield United 4-0. Bale sprung to life, finally, some might say. Obviously, Leeds fell to Brighton 2-0, which was their first defeat in, I think it was 6 games or so. I would probably lean more towards an away win here, but you never know with Leeds. The ever enigmatic Leeds can always spring a surprise. So how do we see this one going?
I think it shows you, doesn't it, how far Leeds have come, that they're really, disappointed when they lose to a team like Brighton. I think Spurs, I read that Gareth Bale has got 8 in 8 now. So for all this talk that he hasn't done that well on his return to England, he's scored a fair few goals. And when he's in form, Spurs are a much better team, aren't they? I thought he was fantastic. Yes, it was only Sheffield United, but 2 of his goals were phenomenally well taken. Obviously Spurs have still definitely got something to play for. You'd say Leeds probably don't. They're, safe. They may be trialling out a few players ahead of next year, whereas Spurs obviously still have that very light chance to get into the Champions League. I agree, Finn. I think if we go to the form book, Spurs should win this one.
I think there's just that little bit of unrest, would you say, at Leeds at the moment with uncertainty about whether Bielsa is going to sign that new contract. I think, if memory serves, because I remember him all the way back in Spain, he never had a reputation for staying very long anywhere. He would be 18 months here, sort of 2 years there, something like that. And I just wonder, I bet Leeds fans are getting a bit nervous. I wouldn't take it for absolute granted that he's going to stay, or at least if they really want him to stay, I think they're probably going to have to make it worth his while.
It's very interesting you say that, Kev, because the rumours up here north of the border that Leeds are looking at Ryan Kent from Rangers, and you would expect there to be some element of succession planning anyway, but usually, if you're going after a player in the forward areas or anywhere really on the pitch, it comes with the manager's blessing. So you would expect Bielsa to maybe be putting plans in place, but if he's not going to be there, then it definitely makes next season a bit more tumultuous for Leeds. Later on Saturday, we have already relegated Sheffield United, 1 win in 5 against Crystal Palace, also with 1 win in 5. I don't know about you guys, but this kind of feels like the football equivalent of kind of a disinterested shrug of the shoulders. There's no chance of Crystal Palace getting into the top half. Sheffield United just want put out of their misery. I think this is probably going to be a bore draw.
Yeah, I think you often hear this phrase, don't you, around this time of year, on the beach. And I think Crystal Palace are the definition of a team who are on the beach. And it seems to happen every season. They've got nothing to play for. I think I was looking at the form table earlier, and over the last 8 games, Palace and Sheffield United have both only got 6 points. They're both down the bottom. So neither team are in form. I think Palace is going to be, what's going to be interesting about Palace is what happens during the off-season as opposed to the last few games. Obviously, we don't know if Roy Hodgson will stay next year. Will they keep Zaha? I think there could be quite a few changes at Palace this summer, which will be pretty interesting. But yeah, this game I will not be tuning in for.
I suppose the only thing I'd say, sorry, I think I've said this once or twice, so sorry for being a bit of a stuck record. There's probably a realistic 6 places, there's 6 different places Palace could finish this season, right, and still be, safe. So whatever it is, 13th to 12th, 13th to 17th, right? And we worked out last year, looking at all the final reports, that each place was worth about £1 million. So the only thing I'd say to that is, for a club, the difference between having another 6 million cash coming in at the end of the season is quite a big one. So the only thing I'd say, like the players, I think you're probably right, the players probably are not that bothered about whether they finish 13th or 17th, but I bet the club are. And so there might be like a bit, I don't know how it works actually these days. Maybe there are some bonuses in the contracts, or maybe, the bosses will just, incentivize them somehow, because actually, it is so tight that anyone could finish in any of those places. And that's without even I'm not even talking about winning sort of 3 or 4 on the spin where they probably could get into top half. I just mean, everyone's within a couple of points within that thing. So, there's a bit to play for.
Definitely. I think Palace are definitely one of those teams where, as you say, kind of £6 million could be the difference between signing a player or not signing a player, or a wedge on a signing on fee or whatever it is. So there maybe is more to play for than I've given it credit for. But moving on to the evening kickoff on Saturday, probably the highlight of the weekend for the Premier League neutral sees champions-elect Man City face off against Chelsea at 5:30 UK time, in what is also potentially a precursor to the Champions League final, of course. I think we've all at one point or another kind of during this season waxed lyrical about this Man City team, whether it's the fact that they've not really had a striker or their, stubborn defence. But we also all know the quality that runs through Chelsea's side too. So it's going to be a very interesting game. My feeling is probably that carrot dangling in front of the Man City team is just too much of a motivator, for them to slip up against Chelsea.
This will be fascinating, this one. If this is the Champions League final as well, it'll be really fascinating to see how Guardiola and, Tuchel approach it. Will they rest a few players, or will they try out a few tactics ahead of the Champions League final? I think I've been so impressed with, Chelsea the last few weeks. Obviously, they knocked Man City out of the FA Cup as well. So we know that they can beat City on their day if they play well. But yeah, like you say, I think City, obviously they're so close now to winning the league. You'd think that they want to get the league tied up so they can, focus purely on the Champions League.
Yeah, it's funny. I think they're such a confident side now that they won't actually be too bothered about that league. I think, all right, it's not mathematical, so you could say, it'll be hanging over them. But I just think, they've won it so many times before now under Guardiola. I think they won't be too concerned. I think it'll be one of those. Do you know what? It's terrible to say this, isn't it? It's going to be an awful 0-0 this game. They're just both going to sit back. Chelsea we know are very defensive at the moment. We know that Man City like to play within themselves and just do almost the bare minimum at the moment. It's quite fascinating to watch them compared to like previous Guardiola teams, but they do, they like to keep it tight as well. And I think both of them are almost going to just have one of those awful games where they just neither bothers to do anything much.
It's very interesting you talk about that tactical side of things, Joe, because Kev, you mentioned it last week about Guardiola potentially. This is the time of season where he likes to spring tactical surprises and all that sort of thing. So maybe Saturday is that day where he goes, actually, we've still got 4 bites of the cherry to win the league. So maybe I kind of test out some players in different positions to really kind of throw Tuchel off the scent. But this looks like it will be City's 5th title in 10 years, which is just phenomenal, I think. From champions-elect to current champions, albeit probably for not much longer, sorry, Kev. Saturday night sees, Kev, your Liverpool take on Joe's Southampton in what I think is the second to last podcast fixture of the season. Of course, Liverpool didn't play at the weekend, which I'm sure we'll get into, but do you think, Kev, that extra break will have helped them or hindered them, or do you think it just won't have made a difference?
I think it usually works out really badly for Liverpool when they have a break, or, up until this season anyway, they were notorious for coming back from little breaks, in terrible form. It's funny, isn't it? Liverpool have been sort of weird. They were absolutely shockingly terrible for all that time, and then put together that mini revival. But then, there's that game against, dropping 4 points in those two games, against Newcastle and Leeds. It was soul destroying, really, post the Super League debacle. So it's really hard to say. Klopp came out and made some comments again, which the fans weren't, thrilled about. Felt, a lot of fans felt that he got the tone wrong again. We know that there's no real improvement in terms of the injury situation. You got, Van Dijk and a few others, back running, whatever. But clearly, Klopp was very clear, before the game that didn't happen, that they're still a long way from playing. There's no plan in place that we can see for next season. No real, feeling about the place at the moment. So, they're obviously very capable of putting in a good performance. But honestly, it's been so hit and miss, and mostly missed, to be honest, that honestly you wouldn't be surprised if it's more drop points, if it's another draw, I really wouldn't be surprised. And I think, the top four dream, it's terrible to call the top four a dream after last season, but that looks well over, and there's some very strange things happen again now. So I think it's just going to be one of those nothing games, to be honest. And I think, maybe Liverpool will win 2-0, but honestly wouldn't be that surprised if we see a 1-1.
And Joe, given the great performances Southampton put in against Leicester, you've obviously not got Vestergaard at the centre defence. Do you still think that Southampton have enough to cause Liverpool problems? And do you think that Leicester result will have given them confidence?
I mean, Southampton, we've actually appealed the Vestergaard red card, so we'll wait and see on that one. I think the last time Southampton played a half-decent match was against Liverpool in January when we beat them 1-0, and we've been terrible ever since. So hopefully, Southampton, even without Danny Ings, who's injured at the moment, we did pose a threat to Leicester, even with 10 men. It's like I've said a few times, if Southampton play well, we can beat anyone. Like, if we get going and, with our press and all of our kind of energy, we can cause anyone problems. Obviously, we won't have Minamino for this one, which is a shame because he played quite well against Leicester. Obviously, you'd expect Liverpool to win just because their forward players mixed with our defence is a recipe for disaster. But if Liverpool aren't quite on it and, we play well, then we could get a point, but I don't expect it.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say, again, it sounds like I'm just being, depressingly negative, but, it's been a long, long time. Like I said last time to JP, it's been a long, long time since Liverpool's forward line was in any kind of form. So I'm not sure that's the case. I honestly really don't think that's the case. To be honest, I'd almost rather see most of that forward line be dropped. And I don't know. I've talked about there being a lack of talent coming through. There's I don't know how old he is. There's an 18-year-old or 17-year-old Polish kid who keeps scoring goals. I wouldn't mind seeing someone like that have a crack, to be honest, playing up front with Jota. I just think, whatever this season. So they're certainly not in the kind of form to terrorise Southampton going into this one.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I think it's a very interesting summer ahead for Liverpool. Sunday kicks off with Brighton travelling to Wolves for the lunchtime kickoff, and I think arguably yet again another really nothing game. Wolves held at home, this time by West Brom. Brighton, I didn't personally see Brighton winning quite so comfortably against Leeds. Joe, do you reckon they can make it 2 wins on the trot, or do you think Wolves will have enough to keep them at bay?
No, I think Brighton definitely can make it another win. They played really well against Leeds. Danny Welbeck, who seems to have been around for ages, scored the second goal. He played well. I read today, so the latest name in the frame for the Tottenham job is actually Graham Potter. And I know, in his 2 seasons at Brighton, they've been kind of fighting relegation, but he has done a really fantastic job. And the feeling would be that it would be a similar appointment to when they took Pochettino from Southampton, who also hadn't done amazing things at Southampton, but they see him as that kind of appointment because he does seem a very special manager and has got a really bright future. I think I said this last week. If Brighton can find a good striker, I think they can be comfortably mid-table, maybe top 10 next season. I think they are that good.
Interesting. I'm not sure if I necessarily agree, but that's what football's about. It's all about opinions. United travel to the West Midlands to face Villa for the 2:05 game. Again, having not played against Liverpool due to the fans' protests. I think football-wise, we'd all probably expect United to come away with this with 3 points. I think they've been almost impeccable away from home this season. I do think it's quite interesting, the way that this game will be set against the backdrop of what happened last weekend. Did you guys have any thoughts on the postponement? Obviously, Kev, as a Liverpool fan, you would have been gearing up for the game, but also just around the scenes around Old Trafford on Sunday and generally just kind of the vibe of activism, I suppose, from the Man United fans going against their ownership.
It seemed to be direct action born out of that bit of frustration, but I guess the club, it was pretty embarrassing for the club, I suppose. I'm not picking on United at all. That's just been, Premier League club really shouldn't have. There should be things in place that stop something like that happen, right? So I think they probably did what they set out to achieve. I actually didn't see many of the scenes. I don't have access to sort of English TV, and I didn't really see the scale of it myself. So it was hard to say. I was very surprised to see it turn out called off. But from everything you read, it feels like there was nothing else that they could have done. As always in these things, it's what happens next, isn't it? I don't see what a solution is. Are the FA going to change the rules and somehow magically mean that the oligarchs and the and the plutocrats are somehow not running football in the way that they are at the moment? No. There's going to be a lot of talk about governance over the next few days and weeks, and about fan engagement and fan representation and so on. Will that really change anything? Probably not, but it might be better PR. It might stop clubs actually making such messy PR mistakes. But real change, I've talked about this, I've talked about this before. What's really hurting the game, in my opinion, is actually the money being taken out of the game, by agents or as part of those deals where the percentages go out of the game. Transfer fees is one thing, right? So a transfer fee, theoretically at least, I'm not a believer in trickle-down economics necessarily, but theoretically at least, big club buys from a smaller club, money goes down and all the rest of it. But obviously where there's a problem is when the money's just being taken out of the game. And I see that as more of an issue. And is that going to change by any of this? Again, I doubt it. So I just don't know what happens next. I'm fascinated to see if anything really changes.
Yeah, I think that's it. Ultimately, it was interesting to see, and plenty of pundits have had their say on the. I think, as you say, Kev, you didn't have access to it. I think it was thousands of people protesting, and hundreds of people got into the stadium. So it wasn't just a guy with a bed sheet. It was clearly a well organised protest. But what actually comes out of that? Is it going to be fan representation? And I think really probably we're at a point where it's going to need some sort of government intervention to facilitate that fan engagement a little bit. And we all know that the powers that be don't particularly want political involvement in sport. But we'll see. It's all very interesting. Moving on to the classic Sky Super Sunday kickoff. A huge game in West Ham's quest for Champions League against an Everton team which are kind of still clinging on to hope that they can get into Europe. West Ham, Monday Night Football ground out a win at a very cold and very rainy Turf Moor. And I think Mikhail Antonio just showed, coming back from injury, just showed his worth, scoring those 2 goals and really turning the game around. Before I jump into kind of my analysis of West Ham against Everton, it would be great to get both of your opinions on whether or not you still see Champions League being a realistic ambition, or if it's only Europe that West Ham can grab.
Well, I think you mentioned earlier that Leicester and Chelsea still have to play each other, right? So one of those two teams are going to drop points at some point, and West Ham aren't that far off. I think you probably need to win all of your remaining games, which is difficult, but doable. And like you said, it's massive to have Antonio back. When he's in the side, he really had something different, doesn't he? His 2 goals against Burnley, really crucial. So I think it'll be difficult, but I think you do have a chance, albeit a slight one.
Yeah, I think there is a chance as well, actually. I think West Ham are probably maybe the best team, best placed to take advantage. Like you say, there is a slim opportunity there. The only thing I'd say about this game is beware Everton away from home. If Everton could have put together any kind of form at home, they'd be in a far better position and probably they'd probably be 3rd or 4th if they had any kind of home form. But for whatever reason, they're just terrible at Goodison this season. What is going on in the city of Liverpool that's made these teams so fragile at home? But beware them away from home. So this is a tricky one. I think Joe's absolutely right. I think whoever can win all 4 remaining games, for those who've got 4 left, all 4 remaining games, I think they've got a chance. But without winning all 4, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Kevin. Actually, that you alluded to the point perfectly, that I think this could be a really high-scoring game because West Ham have been shown to be porous at the back and great going forward. Everton have been really good away from home. So for once, I think that the TV people have probably got it right in terms of which games that they've picked. But I think something that's going to be really interesting for West Ham is not necessarily, having so many injuries, but the people coming back from injuries. So how quickly does it take them to get back up to speed, and can we afford to have them thrown in the deep end? But definitely will be an interesting one, and fingers crossed we can find a way into the Champions League, because I think that would be excellent for English football, given the backdrop of the Super League having not one of the traditional top 6 going in. Rounding us off on Sunday night, West Brom go to an Arsenal side that, I think are hot and cold, to say the least. I think West Brom are probably relegated now that they've drawn with Wolves. All good records have to come to an end at some point, and unfortunately, Allardyce's non-relegation, I think, is probably going to come to an end. Aubameyang being back is a huge bonus for Arsenal, I think, and I think really the only chance I see for West Brom is if Arsenal's semi-final on Thursday goes all the way to penalties and it saps out a bit of the energy out of the players' legs. What do you guys think?
I don't know, actually. I've actually been impressed with West Brom these last few games. They absolutely thumped Southampton. They were very impressive in that game. And, their last 2 results have been pretty decent. They've drawn against Wolves and Villa, which ordinarily for them would be really fantastic results. I think it's just a case of, it's a little bit too little too late, isn't it? But if they'd have had this form, the form they've shown over the last, 6 to 8 games over the course of the season, they'd probably be comfortably mid-table. So I think it shows you that they are a good side. And Arsenal, it depends which Arsenal turns up. Like I say, I think it depends very much how their semi-final on Thursday has gone. But I think West Brom, yes, they probably are relegated, but I think they'll still try everything to win the game to finish above Fulham. So can't really call this one.
Yeah, it's funny. I agree. I think there's a lot to be impressed by with West Brom. I think it probably is too late for them. I think they're in the same situation like the clubs in, sort of 5th, 6th, win all 4 games. And I suppose you never know, because there are just those 2 or 3 clubs who need one more win or need 2 or 3 draws to be absolutely certain. If by some miracle they manage to win all 4, but it's got down to 4, so the ask is 4. It's not like they have to win 10. They just have to win 4. This, like I say, it's too hard. Arsenal did look good. They looked fairly relaxed, I thought. At the weekend, they looked like an okay team. But like you say, playing on Thursday, I guess, right? And if that does take it out of them, yeah, it might be a tricky one. I'd actually love West Brom to do it. I'd love them to keep it going for a bit longer, just to keep it interesting. So, maybe go on then. My money's on them as well. I reckon they will. I reckon they'll do it.
The final game of the weekend sees, just as we were talking about, all likelihood a championship-bound team in Fulham playing against, in my opinion, probably a just safe Burnley. Obviously, I saw Burnley play against West Ham. I thought they played some really good stuff. You know what you're getting most of the time. It's going to be, sheer physicality, and they really pinned West Ham back at times. And then, bizarrely enough, they were really weak in the air defensively, which is just not something you would expect from a Sean Dyche team. The question, I think, that's more interesting now than whether this game will go which way is whether or not Fulham are good enough of a team to come back straight up like Norwich have done this weekend, and most likely Watford will do, whether or not they can get back up next season.
I think they might struggle because the majority of their team are on loan, aren't they? So they'll have a completely different team in the Championships next season. I must say I've been really disappointed with Fulham. So when they beat Liverpool 7 or 8 games ago, they were in with a real shout, weren't they? I think we were all probably saying, they could catch, Newcastle or Brighton. They were in with a real shout. But since then, I think they've picked up 1 point out of 6 games. And I think over the last 8 games, they're bottom of the form table, below Sheffield United and below Southampton, which is just not good enough. For a team really, really scrapping to try and stay in the league, I think they've been really poor. And it's hard because I really like Fulham. It's a fantastic away day, Craven Cottage by the Thames. It's a brilliant away day. But I would love them to stay in the league, but I think they're gone now.
Speaking of bad form, Burnley, they've got to be so glad they got that bizarre 4-0 win over Wolves, right? Because without that, they would be right in it as well. And I think their only other win in recent memory was another bizarre, it was against very fragile Everton at home, but even so, they got those 2 wins. And then apart from that, it's an absolute shocker of a run as well. So, yeah, they're one of those teams. They want one more win, don't they? Or a couple of draws. They're just about, and not much to be impressed by with them either. So yeah, two fairly unimpressive sides facing off at the end of the weekend.
And I think that wraps everything up for this week. I think it's really potentially a very important week for the Premier League. Champions can be crowned, teams can be condemned to the Championship. So before we go, though, Kev, as always, hopefully will rhyme us out with his recap of the week. So, Kev, the floor is yours.
Let's see. Just finished this on the bus coming home, so let's see if it makes any sense. 30-something poems finished, enthusiasm undiminished, but weekly rhyming can be tiring when the football's uninspiring. Fine, if you're Manchester City, they put the bang-bang in the chitty. A goal like that from Kun Aguero, what can you do? Doff the sombrero. The game's high point for us admirers who know the man from Buenos Aires will leave us gutted, broken-hearted next season after he's departed. Someone I hope is not discarded, the best thing to come out of Cardiff, the man whose skill is off the scale, the one, the only Gareth Bale, as lethal as a slippery nipple. He helped himself to one more triple. I know. Don't get overexcited. It was just last place Sheffield United, but he makes it all look so routine. I wonder now what might have been if he found a way to please his former coach, the Portuguese, who will be hanging up the old diploma in his new office up in Roma. Maybe we've all got him wrong. He's never unemployed for long. But Spurs fans won't be too deflated. The top 4 race, they're reinstated. Okay, it's still a touch remote. Like Liverpool, they've missed the boat. The Reds, of course, were left inactive as Man United fans, combative, stormed the ground to have their say about the men from Tampa Bay. It was nice to see them once more cry out against the Glazer leveraged buyout, the one that saddled them with debt the fans won't forgive or forget. $1 billion plus in interest payments and wad of cash for super agents. But I wonder if there's a solution, an appetite for revolution. Do fans really want to see the super owners up and flee? Or is there some other arrangement, a little token fan engagement? Really, what's it going to alter? It goes back to Rock of Gibraltar, the legal case with Coolmore Stud, the bitterness and bad blood, the barren years, the pain, remorse, can all be traced back to that horse. Sorry if that just sounds trite. It isn't written out of spite. I just mean I don't see the Blazers doing much about the Glazers. So they and all the oligarchs can run the clubs like amusement parks. To them, real fans will always be just dumb, devoted legacy.
Nice one, Kev, and very well done on getting such breaking news like Mourinho to Roma into your rhyming recap of the week.
Like I say, done on the bus, mate.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks as always.
Thanks, Vino.
Cheers. So as JP's mentioned the last few episodes, we've got some great interviews coming out on our YouTube channel that come out alongside the Premier League podcast. And this week is an absolute belter of an interview. We spoke to Mark Bosnich, of course, the former Villa, Chelsea and Man United goalkeeper. A phenomenal listen, really. That'll be out on Sunday on our YouTube channel. Just search for Irishman, Englishman, Scotsman Football Podcast, and you'll no doubt find us there. Give us a subscribe, find us on your podcast platforms. It is all very much appreciated. Share an episode with your mates, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy the games.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of our podcasts, please click on the red subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side. Thank you.